Thanks, Chairman Grassley. I continue to appreciate your commitment to bipartisan standards for vetting presidential nominees. We may have our differences about first rounds, second rounds, and the like, but I've always enjoyed working with you. I had an interesting meeting yesterday. I've been on this committee over 20 years. And my meeting was with the advocacy group for the FBI agents. It's the first time I've ever met with them. Two women came to see me. One had a history of service of 17 years with the FBI, the other 22 years, and both of them, their fathers before them. You could see this as a real commitment to law enforcement. And they told me what's going on today at the Federal Bureau of Investigation is something they never, ever dreamed of. You see, the FBI is not just a series on television. It's a real-life and criminal investigative agency that we count on to keep us safe as a country. The men and women who serve there risk their lives every day for America, and I appreciate it. But historically, they've been non-political, totally non-political. Only one political appointment in the entire Federal Bureau of Investigation, the director. The rest of them felt that they were over and above the world of politics, but they're going through an experience now that they never dreamed of. For example, the new administration, the Trump administration, has asked all those who worked on the files of the January 6th assault on the U.S. Capitol to identify themselves. 5,000 agents and staff personnel were involved in that criminal prosecution, which was one of the largest in the history of the Department of Justice. These people representing the agents said to me, "Senator, do you really want us to disclose our identity to the public? Do you think that keeps those agents safe and their families safe?" Some of the people that were involved in the January 6th demonstration here at the Capitol have vast and extensive criminal records. The president gave them all a blanket pardon, those who committed those crimes on January 6th. Included among them were individuals with 38 previous criminal convictions. Do we want to disclose the names of the FBI agents so that they and their families can be vulnerable to those sorts of people now on the loose across America? One of the people released by blanket pardon of the president, who was involved in January 6th, got into a gun confrontation in the state of Indiana, lost his own life when he pulled a gun on a policeman after he had been pardoned to come out into society. So is it any wonder the FBI agents say to me, "Senator, honestly, how political is this?" Our agents are saying this has never happened before, that we're being asked about our political backgrounds involving prosecutions. They say to us, if we got involved in the January 6th prosecution in an investigative capacity for one of the 5,000, what's going to happen 4 years from now when there's a new president, if there is one? And I believe there would be under the Constitution. What's going to happen if there's a new president who said, let's find out how many FBI agents were involved in Trump's immigration procedure? This is totally unheard of at the FBI. In the history of the FBI, they've never faced this. So why are we going through this political process? That's the thing that we keep asking over and over again. Are the people who are being nominated here determined to do a good job under the Constitution and laws of this country? Or are they out to settle political score? If they're out to settle political score, I'm not voting for them. And I hope that my colleagues, even on the Republican side, will think twice about that. What's going on now in the Department of Justice as well as the FBI, sadly, is confirming some of the concerns that many of us have felt about the situation before us. President Trump vowed to use the Department of Justice to advance his own interest, to seek, and I quote, retribution against the enemy within. And in the first few weeks of his administration, his cabinet is already bringing these threats to fruition. The Trump administration has purged dozens of senior career leaders at the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. As I said, these agents said that's unheard of. It's not happened before. It's happening now. And the administration has forced career law enforcement officers to retire, resign, or be fired simply for executing tasks that were assigned to them. These actions are nakedly partisan. In a memo firing a dozen career Justice Department prosecutors, the acting Attorney General wrote, quote, "Given your significant role in prosecuting the president, I do not believe that leadership of the department can trust you in implementing the president's agenda faithfully. We're going to have some testimony in a few minutes from Mr. Blanche. He and I talked about this issue when he visited the office, and I thank you for that. Many of these people were assigned these cases. They didn't choose them. They were assigned to do investigative work and prosecutorial work, and they did what they were told. That's not uncommon, and it doesn't mean they're traitors to this country who can't be trusted. This purge appears to be a coordinated effort throughout the Department of Justice and the FBI. And it doesn't just stop at cases directly involving the president. Ed Martin, who President Trump installed as an interim U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, has fired dozens of prosecutors and investigators simply for working on cases stemming from the January 6th insurrection. Some of us were here that day and will never forget it as long as we live. You've seen the videos. You can't escape them. They're on television constantly, of the mob that beat up on our cops, the very people who protected you and your families as you came into this building today. They stood by us on January 6th, and many of them took a beating. Notably, Mr. Martin, who was a leader of the so-called Stop the Steal movement, was himself at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. He's now the interim U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. He moved to dismiss all charges against January 6th defendants. This includes a defendant whom Mr. Martin was still representing as an attorney, a clear violation of professional ethics. Many members on the Democratic side of the aisle expressed fears that Attorney General Pam Bondi would put her loyalties to the president ahead of anything else. Our fears have been realized. On her first day as Attorney General, Pam Bondi issued 14 memos to the Department of Justice staff that reflect the most extreme of President Trump's priorities, including far-right Project 2025 policies. Attorney General Bondi established a, quote, weaponization working group that is a clear effort to make good on her pledge to, quote, investigate the investigators. This working group purports to review the activities of all departments and agencies exercising civil or criminal enforcement authority over the last 4 years. This breathtakingly broad mandate is a smokescreen for retaliation. Sadly, it includes January 6th offenders, people who prosecuted January 6th offenders. The administration's claim that it's rooting out politics within the department cannot be taken seriously, given President Trump's own comments at Ms. Bondi's swearing in. Here's what the president said, quote, she will lead the Democrats right down. I'm supposed to say she's going to be totally impartial with respect to Democrats, and I think she'll be impartial as a person can be. I'm not sure if there's a possibility of totally. End of quote from the president. Given the political retribution that's already being carried out with the blessing of the president at the Justice Department, Mr. Blanche's nomination merits heightened scrutiny. If confirmed, he will serve as second in command at the department, overseeing the day-to-day operations. With Ms. Bondi's unyielding loyalty to President Trump already disclosed, we must ask ourselves whether Mr. Blanche would be willing to act as an independent voice within the department's leadership. Mr. Blanche, I enjoyed meeting with you in my office. It was a good meeting. You told me repeatedly that your loyalty is to the rule of law. That's the right answer from my point of view. But I'm afraid we need to ask you more to conclude that you would be able to rise to the occasion which is likely to present itself. You served as a criminal defense lawyer. You acknowledged to me that you feel loyalty to the president. I understand that. He was your client. And you have repeatedly described the investigation and prosecutions of his behavior as lawfare, a new word for me, but one that's become somewhat common. I think we have an important responsibility. I thank Ms. Slater for your background and your willingness to be coming before us today. But honest to goodness, what's happening at the Federal Bureau of Investigation should give Republicans and Democrats pause. That great agency is entrusted with the safety and security of the United States of America. Making it political does not help. I yield.